¿Qué ondas, primos?
Primas
Y Primes.
Welcome to
My Primos.
My Primos
My
Primo
podcast.
My name is Freddie.
My name's Kevin Garcia.
My name is Elia Maria Madrid.
Well, this is Chikuma, whenever I can make it.
My Primos podcast discusses all things fandom and pop culture,
From comic books,
Movies?
To whatever obsession we have this week.
but with a Latine
Latine,
Malatine.
perspective. Remember, we're all primos,
We're all Primes.
we're all primos.
no matter what part of the world we're from. Here we are.
¿Qué onda?
¿Qué ondas, primos, primas, and primes? And welcome back to My Primos podcast. My name is Freddie, and with me tonight is my primo and yours, Mr. KevinGarcia.com.
Yo.
Say what's up, Kevin.
What's up, Kevin?
Man, I'm glad we got to record today because I feel like it's always something.
Hey,
You know,
look,
something stands in the way of progress, you know?
look, this is the last few weeks of school for me. So because I'm teaching and this is the end of the semester. And it's also when I'm trying really hard to put together the Kickstarter that successfully funded a few months ago. My
Yeah.
personal goal was to have it ready by the end of May. It's getting tight because of all the other responsibilities I've had.
Sure.
But on the Kickstarter, I put it be ready by August. It will certainly be ready by then. But like, I think I might just barely miss my May internal deadline. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm glad we got this going because we always end up, people are like, hey, what happened to the show? Like, you miss a week and they think you're dead. You know what I mean?
No. We didn't miss a week. We were giving the audience a chance to absorb the previous episode.
Understood. The water cooler talk we mentioned last episode, right?
Exactly. We're doing this for you guys.
Because if you had episodes week after week, you just get sick of it. You're like, I'm done with these guys.
Look, yeah. See, how many podcasts are out there that go weekly? And you're like, okay, it's good. But are they Primos good?
Ooh, are they primo? That's the answer.
The Primos are Primo.
Primos are prime. Well, Primos, thanks again for checking in with us. And of course, you know, you can follow along at My Primos Podcast on all social media, as well as check out myprimospodcast.com where we have posts, more reviews from content on there from Mr. Kevin Garcia, as well as myself. And just let us know what you think. I mean, if you want to have any guests on the show, or if you want to be a guest on the show, if you're a creative, you don't have to be Latino to be on the show. We have plenty of creators that are from all walks of life, all nationalities, all races. Please feel free. Just hit us up at My Primos Podcast. Have you on the show. Have a great time because we're all primos, no matter where you're from.
You know, as we say that, if you have like an indie comic, indie movie, an indie video game, we want to hear about it. I dig the indie stuff. There's like so much originality that just pops out of the indie sphere.
Definitely. I mean, that's where we spur our stuff from, right? Like we love the indie because there's so much freedom. There's the good overlooked, and then we talk about hero. What is it? Movie and superhero fatigue. But yet, when we look for the indie, that's where we get that burst of new, that like, that's never been done before, or
That's where the fresh
reinterpretation.
blood comes from.
There you go, the fresh blood. But tonight, Kevin, we are going to talk about something old yet new
And also not indie at all, yet
at all.
experimental at times.
Definitely. Kevin, what are we, and you're a fan of this, more so than I am, I'll say that. What are we discussing tonight?
You know, I am indeed a fan. I have loved the Planet of the Apes since I was a small simian. You know, I watched all the old movies. I remember one night there was like a marathon. My little brother and I think I was in high school and he was like probably middle school. We found out there was a marathon, so we just stayed up and watched all the movies in a row. And when we thought they were going to be done, they started putting episodes of the TV series. We're like, oh, okay, we're still here. We're going to keep going.
Yeah, I remember the TV series. Ooh, my parents loved El Planeta de los Simios. This was their shit. Like, they loved it. And my mom really was like, my mom was so cool, man. Like, thinking back, right? I don't know what it is. When you're younger, you don't really notice these things, right? You kind of go like, oh, why are we watching this weird guy in a mask? I want to watch like Power Rangers, cool people in masks, you know? But there was something there, and there was depth to Planet of the Apes. And even in Spanish, when you would see the actors, you know, kind of the dub for it, it was deep. And my mom loved it. And she would bring stuff home. She would bring some, like, even to this day, she gave me a box set of the Brady Bunch. She gave me a box set of Gilligan's Island. She gave me a box set of, what is that? Where is it? I have a whole thing. Partridge Family. Also, like she's all about these old school 70s
You
shows.
were
You know?
raised on the classics, and that's what's important.
And looking back at it, you can kind of go and say, "Whoa!" Like I tell my son, "What can we take from it? Right? What made it good at the time, or what made it so bad that now it's good?" And
Also possible.
that's the Planet of the Apes kind of falls in that minutia, right? Because there's a lot of depth there. Very. How would you describe the Planet of the Apes series in general?
It's camp, but it's camp with a very strong social satire bent.
Definitely that, because when you look at sci-fi, we talked about it before. That's that avenue of like horror and sci-fi where we get to play with those social conversations. X-Men we talked about last time. It's always been a kind of in your face about the inequality with that. But the Planet of the Apes, I always thought about it like I was a kid. I would sit there and kind of watch as my parents were. And I'm like, this seems so scientific, so beyond me that my brain couldn't grasp it. And it took to this age where now I look back and I enjoy those old films and even the newer ones, like the newer set we're gonna talk about here, this new trilogy that they're trying to rebuild for the Planet of the Apes series. But everything from Charlton Heston days.
Quadrology, maybe.
Because I have my thoughts about the new film, which I don't know if we're gonna lead off with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but
let's do a little bit of both. I mean, let's start with your background. You said you did get introduced to these a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
Again, I've rewatched the originals over and over again. What do you remember from those? What stands out from those early movies?
So for me, obviously, it felt very like of the times, right? We're talking like Spartacus type vibe. It's always about that. Charlton Heston kind of sticks in my brain. He was the one, damn dirty apes, all that. And in
His
Spanish,
crazy laugh in the first one, man, like his crazy laugh.
this thing I remember it in Spanish because like estos ellos lo destruyeron todo, like that whole like passion behind it. And then when they're having conversation, like the apes walking around in conversation, it just kind of like my brain was like, why are these people? I guess the people are the animals, and the animals are in charge. And my brain as a kid was like, what? But moving forward, and then when they announced, what was it, Tim Burton version, I was like, huh, Mark Wahlberg and Tim Burton making an Apes movie.
I actually know somebody who had a pretty big role in that movie.
Oh, was it big? Like literally, like a big.
You know
character?
what? Yeah, literally. Yeah, Kevin Grievous played one of the the General Gorilla.
There you go.
I've known him for quite a few years, so it's kind of like,
oh, cool.
It's kind of funny when I watch the movie. I'm like, that's Kevin's voice. I was like, yeah.
Well, you are more in depth. Do you say you've watched all of them? I've watched a lot of them, and throughout the sporadic stuff, like people back in LA would be like, "Hey, they're showing the Apes films at the Alexandria downtown. I'm gonna go watch the Apes for like 4 or 5 hours."
So let me break down the timeline, and maybe that will help the discussion. All right. So we got our initial Planet of the Apes film, which, by the way, is based on a short story that I think was in French originally. And in the original story, it was very similar to the basic plot, but the apes had a essentially modern 20th century level of technology. They had helicopters and stuff like that. But in the first movie, they have Charlton Heston, being an astronaut who took off in a spaceship, and the whole plan was they were going to be put in cryogenic freeze because it was going to take that long to get to the next star.
Yeah.
And his whole setup, which I really liked, was that he just hated humanity. So he didn't become an astronaut to be a scientist. He didn't do it to explore the stars. He did it to get away from humans. It's the weirdest premise.
Tell me before you jump in, right?
Yeah.
To the next one. At what point, because this is where my brain started loving it a lot more, because I love time travel.
That's what
I love time travel stuff, right? So get into that for me, because I feel like that's something that gets overlooked.
So I just wanted to establish that first, then we'll run through the rest of it quickly, because I agreed. So the whole premise, of course, that he thinks it's been thousands of years, and it has been thousands of years, and that they're on an alien planet. Of course, we all know the big twist at the end, that turns out the ship had done a U-turn coming out all the way back. But by the time they landed, apes are in charge. And of course, shenanigans. So that's
you blew it all up.
Exactly. All the other astronauts die one way or another. Some killed by apes, some just by accident, and so on. But the next movie, Charlton Heston did not agree to be part of it. So they said, could you at least film like one scene? So he said, fine, he'll film a couple scenes and that's it. So he's in like 10 minutes total of the sequel, but they hire an actor to basically be his character. And the premise is that his spaceship was sent to go find the first one, which is ridiculous because we were told flat out the reason Charlton Heston signed up for this was because he knew he'd never be found and he was happy with that. So why would they go looking? It's ridiculous. But whatever, he goes looking for him. And they could have just recast Charlton Heston. No one would have noticed, but whatever. And in that one, we find out, this is going to be relevant later, that there are, because humanity at this far as we know are mute and not able to process thoughts more than a modern chimpanzee could, right?
Sure.
But we find out that there are humans that have for thousands of years lived in bomb shelters, essentially having their own little secret society. And over that time, they've kind of forgotten what human culture was like. All they really remember is that the bomb is important. That's all they really remember. And of course, that one famously ends with blowing up the entire Earth with a single bomb, which you got to wonder when it comes to doomsday weapons, is this really a good idea? But whatever. I'm not the government.
I mean, later on, instead of a bomb, we have a virus. So,
well, I have a theory on that. We'll get to as my little headcanon. So, and that's beneath Planet of the Apes, is where we find the humans living underground, right? So the Earth blows up, and then in the next one, Escape from Planet of the Apes. We're now from the 60s into the 70s now. In Escape from Planet of the Apes, Cornelius and his wife and a third ape, who is a red shirt of the apes, we know he's going to die, get into the second spaceship, which they are not only able to rebuild, but are able to get it to go back in time 3,000 years. How?
There we go.
Don't worry about it. They just did. Okay. When they go back in time, they become celebrities. We're like, look at the talking apes. It's really cool.
Yep. I remember that.
But the government drugs them. And this is where by the way, we got a lot of social commentary in the first two, but these are where they get more like pointed in their commentary on like modern day humanity. And they drug the apes to get them to reveal the truth. And they give the history up to that point. And in their version of history, about 300 years from the point of where they're at, several hundred years, there is a virus that kills off all the dogs and cats. So naturally, all humans say, I want to adopt a gorilla, because that's what you would do if you didn't have a dog or cat. You'd adopt a gorilla.
I would go parrot or iguana.
No, they went straight to gorilla. So so now there are gorillas and chimpanzees and orangutans all over the earth that have been adopted by humans. And they said, hey, since they have hands, let's teach them to be servants without pay. Use your own terminology there. So that happened. And then after decades or however long it was of the apes now being these servants, one ape develops the ability to talk and says no. And that ape's name was Nedo or something like that. Nedo? I have to remember the name. It starts with an N. Anyway, so that happened. Well, the humans are now worried. Oh no, this is our future. We better kill these apes. So the apes escape, but one of them is pregnant, obviously. And she gives, the wife is pregnant. So she gives birth and she names her child Milo. Just go with it. He's Milo, trust me. And they shenanigans die. And then the baby ape Milo gets raised by a circus chimpanzee, because why not? Right. Now we get to our next movie, which is honestly my favorite of the set, which is
Conquest, isn't it?
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
So this is the one that is really hard on the social commentary. Possibly,
do they riot?
Yes,
like literally,
whole riot.
Yeah.
Possibly
Revolution.
due to the time travel. Instead of the ape and the virus thing happening 300 years later, it happened within the next 20 years. And somehow within that 20 years, not only did all the cats and dogs die, but there were enough chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans that every person on Earth could have a pet. So,
but I love how it's immediately like, okay, though. Like
immediately, yes. Like it was like, you know what? We're not going to wait a few hundred years for this. It's just going to go straight to slavery. All right.
I can't. Where's my dog? Here he is. Like he's always here because I'm recording. Right? That's his whole thing now. Like I can't imagine out of nowhere just having a chimp. I would freak the fuck out.
Yeah, like you're like my dog's not around anymore. I better adopt an orangutan.
not like I'm serious. Couldn't get fish or whatever.
Nope. No comment on the fish or
humans,
iguanas, or anything else. Anyway, so that we find out that Milo has been raised in the circus by a very nice Ricardo Montalban, who has renamed Milo Caesar. Why? That's not really important.
Sorry, I'm mixing my franchises.
Exactly. Well, we're getting to that. So he renames him Caesar, right? And Caesar then can't always talk, but pretends he can't. But eventually is able to convince the apes, who are again very simplistic but developing, to revolt against humans. We get that giant riot, and at the last scene of the episode, Caesar's ready to kill all humans, Magneto style, right? And then his girlfriend chimpanzee is the first non-futuristic ape to talk, and she says no. So instead of the first word no being telling humans I won't do what you tell me to, it becomes her saying don't become a murderer. So that's interesting. It changed. The timeline changed. And then we get my least favorite of the set, which is Battle for Planet of the Apes, takes place 20 years later. Just like with the previous movie where the Charlton Heston didn't want to come back, so they brought a guy that looked just like him. This time there was a guy who worked for the government who helped hunt down Caesar, but ended up befriending him at the end of the movie. But I guess he didn't want to come back. So in Battle for Planet of the Apes, they just had another guy who is his brother. You just go with it. Can't just, whatever.
I mean, we just want to see more apes, but then you start seeing as the movies. I don't know if it's just I remember watching these. They're just falling apart. Like the masks and the costumes aren't even like.
Okay, I thought the masks were pretty good for the time. I really do.
No, for the originals, right? But when we look at like the last couple films in that first set,
so
I think they just kept recycling the same masks and like they were like dangling off the dude's chin at a certain point.
Pretty much the background apes. So Battle for Planet of the Apes is basically a low rent version of Mad Max before Mad Max was ever made. It's not good. It feels like watching a bad Power Rangers episode to me. And that is immediately followed by the TV series. And now the TV series seems to be in a new continuity, which comes off of this timeline. So now we've already got at least 2 timelines. We have the first timeline, and then we have the second timeline, right? What's interesting to me is that it is heavily implied and stated several times that what caused the end of the world was not the virus or the ape rebellion, but rather humans blowing each other up with nuclear bombs. But my thing on that is it is never confirmed by anyone who would know, because the people who say it are like, we worship the bomb and we know the bomb once did this. And the apes are like, well, I heard that there was an ape thousands of years ago that did this. So nobody really knows what happened, right? So what happened is, in my headcanon, is that the movies that we're watching right now could be the original timeline. This could be so we got the virus.
The
virus. We have the apes and humans trying to boss them around. We have the wars happening. Remember that first ape I said who said no in the original timeline? He shows up in the, I think, second movie as Caesar's enemy. It's the same name, same character. And he gets killed. So that first ape that said no in the original timeline is in the current reboot series. Now, of course, the series that movie that no one wants to talk about is the one we mentioned earlier, the Tim Burton one. That one's in its own little weird timeline.
I don't know. They really like. So here's my thing. Here's why I didn't enjoy that film. And put it out there, right?
No one enjoyed that film.
So why I can sit back and watch something, and I can be, what's the word? Objective, right? I can sit back and watch and kind of see, okay, there's a story beat here. Oh, this is a mechanism to move the story forward. Okay, fine. We're like, you kind of understand what we're trying to do. But that movie just tried so hard to almost flip the idea that the apes weren't as dominant as they actually were. They tried to downplay it so much where the astronaut, Mark Wahlberg, is Superman. You know what I mean? Against these apes.
Well, because, I mean, if you're going to lionize somebody, it might as well be a racist guy that once beat up somebody just because of his skin color. Yeah, why does Mark Wahlberg still get jobs in Hollywood? I honestly don't understand.
And nobody's really, whatever. That's a different topic for a different day.
The one good thing about that movie was Paul Giamatti. He was amazing as an orangutan.
That guy can act.
So you talk about trying to separate it from the original. That one didn't even take place on Earth. The whole premise of the original was that, oh my gosh, it's Earth. And here they're trying to we want to surprise the audience. So it's literally not Earth. And then, because they have a whole other weird origin for these apes, which again, I don't know. In every reality of these ape movies, they always go from a handful of apes to thousands or millions almost overnight. And I'm like, how? Like maybe the virus that causes them to get smarter also causes them to get really, really fertile. I don't know. But at the end of that movie, they have the whole
Interesting.
Abraham Lincoln scene, I guess, right? Which, on the one hand, I wish they would explain it. On the other hand, I don't care to ever go back to that universe.
They should have just leaned into it, and I would have loved preferred if he found a top hat, and then we would have been like,
They
yes,
did lean into it in that last scene, but up to that last
yeah.
scene, it was maybe you'll find an ape sexy because she's played by the girlfriend of the director. And it's like I didn't need sexy chimpanzee. I really didn't.
I don't know. It was just weird. And then my wife and me, like she loves the films after.
Yeah.
She didn't really watch the TV series or the old films, but we talk about it, and she was right into it. That was what it was called, Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. So now we have the reboot series, really, right?
Oh, hold on. Before you could dive in.
Yeah.
Is this a reboot of the original storyline, or is this a continuation of it in some way?
So what I'm saying is there's one of two ways to look at it. My headcanon as of this moment, and we're going to get into spoilers for the new movie, my headcanon as of this moment is that it could potentially be the original timeline that leads to the Charlton Heston movie.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's in my head, there's nothing that directly contradicts it, with the exception of nuclear bombs weren't set off. But again, we've only had word of mouth saying that nuclear bombs went off. And I think it's very reasonable that people who humanity got destroyed during the Cold War pretty much would not remember much about like everything.
True.
So it could be the original timeline. The other way of looking at it, which is more likely, is that this is a completely new timeline, which could tie into the original at some point if they wanted to. All that really matters is that it cannot possibly tie into the Mark Wahlberg movie. That's the only thing that matters.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I love this film.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great retelling of the story. I really love the casting. I mean, don't get me wrong, not John Lithgow. And Frank, I'm like, Frank
Lithgow is amazing. Lithgow, I will watch him in anything.
He is so good, man. Even the angry preacher in Footloose, right?
Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks of him for Third Rock from the Sun. I think of him from Santa Claus the movie. I think of him from Harry and the Hendersons. He had so many great stuff.
But this film, I think it really, I don't know what it was. Okay, so if we dissect it in a minimal sense, right? Because we can't go in depth so much.
I'll define it for you in one word: realism.
There it is.
They were taking a completely fantastical concept, a silly, campy 1960s thing, played it completely straight-faced and realistically. And you know what gets me is during that same time period when this came out, what year did it come out? 2011. During that same time period when it came out, DC was trying to make dark movies. Marvel was trying to make their movies realistic. They were kind of getting into the idea of wearing colorful costumes, but they were like tiptoeing into it. So everybody was like, oh, movies have to, if they're funny or fancy, they have to be dark and serious. And this was dark and serious, but not in any kind of like way that wasn't necessary. So they took a campy story and made it fun. I made it feel like you could see it happening.
And you still get the social commentary there, like 100%.
Only this time it's more about animal welfare and caring for mental illness.
100%, and we get Malfoy, right, from Harry Potter, and I mean, you have some great actors in there that kind of just go like Andy Serkis, right? And you're like, oh shit, like amazing.
The studio tried really hard to get him nominated for an Oscar. In every one of the movies starring Serkis, they tried to get him nominated for an Oscar as a mocap actor, and the Academy never allowed it.
Why would that be, Kevin? Is it because of the CG?
Well, I think if you go back to 2001: A Space Odyssey, you would be hard pressed to find a 1960s movie that you could show to a modern audience and have them believe it was a modern movie as much as 2001. I'm not saying it's the only one, obviously. There's plenty of great movies, Easy Rider, a bunch of other things. But what I'm saying is that 2001 was the best science fiction movie up to that point. Like there were other great movies that, Day the Earth Stood Still is a classic. I love it. I like a lot of King Kong, Godzilla, of course. But in terms of like treating science fiction seriously and presenting it in a way that's realistic, 2001 was amazing. But did not get nominated for an Oscar. Simply because they did not nominate sci-fi films. Just by nature of being sci-fi. And the same thing happened with a lot of the Marvel movies and stuff. As popular as they got, Usually the biggest grossing movie of the year would get at least a nod in the, film of the year or director or something. And Marvel wasn't getting those until Black Panther. And even that seemed more of just like a little like, okay, we'll let you guys have this one nomination. You know what I mean? And I think it has a lot to do with bias against, sci-fi genre films, that kind of stuff. And here,
Or
not only
even
is that,
comedies, man. Like, I remember being a kid watching, like, why the hell does Austin Powers not get a nod for best fucking movie of the year? Like, for its time. You know what I mean? For its time.
what's crazy is it would have 20, 30 years earlier, because musicals and comedies did get Oscar nods for music for film of the year up until the, I think, early 70s. And now you'd be hard pressed. There's a couple comedies that get nominated, but very rarely.
But yeah, but the film, I think this kicked off the new era of the Apes films, and it was a great start. Franco was in the film, whatever, he did his job, but really the story was well written, the performances from Circus and the other people playing the apes, if you will, and even just like you said, surrounding it with so much realism that we were in a time and place where this could really happen.
Yeah.
This is potentially can really
I mean,
happen.
could you imagine a worldwide pandemic that just spread via people coughing and not taking proper precautions? Like,
The hell you
it
say?
sounds fantastical, right? But like, it could happen today. You never know.
Right? Think about it.
Um,
That came to mind so much. I remember, like, during the pandemic, we were like, Planet of the Apes, huh? Like that. What
Literally
if
the last scene of that movie. Literally the last scene.
exactly 100%?
Yeah. And the big thing for me too is, we're talking about the performances. Would you consider Circus in that movie? Is Caesar an animated character, or is he a live action character? The problem
See,
with that,
I sat and watched this film, and I knew that they took facial, you know,
yeah,
captions. Like what play video games, right? Stuff like that. We kind of can appreciate the performance behind that, even though it's an animated film. Let's say, even if it was a cartoon, the energy and the voice and the gravitas to that character, it, I consider it almost that blending, right? That uncanny valley, I guess, when it
mhm.
throws you off, where you say, "Hey, is it real or not?" But regardless, just it sticks in my mind. His performance as Caesar, like just that first verse when he says "no," right when he like no, like that. Oh shit, you feel it in your bones.
Again, there's so many. That's what I was going to get at in that movie. They do so many callbacks. We get the first word being no. In that film, you can see in a TV screen behind Franco or somebody, there is the Icarus takes off. The Icarus is Charlton Heston's ship.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
so like it's there. So ever since that movie, I thought that movie was gonna have a post credit scene of the ship landing. Like I was waiting for that ship. You
That
know
would
what
have
I
been
mean?
cool. Yeah,
All right. By the way, I'm as I'm looking it up, I think Koba. I said a name with an N. I think it was with a K. Koba might have been the ape that said no because he's in the sequel, the Dawn of the
I've
Planet of the Apes.
maybe I'm imagining it, but I recall Caesar saying no at
No, he did.
a
No. I'm saying no. When I say the first ape that said no in the story told in Escape from Planet of the
previous.
Apes, yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
so basically they did well. They do a lot of callbacks in this series to the original series, and I will say for the first three films, the callbacks are all very subtle. So like Koba having that name, Caesar saying no. Those are subtle callbacks that unless you really watch the originals, you wouldn't notice it.
I mean, the what is it? Apes Together Stronger. That's
Yeah.
from the old films too.
Well,
Like
in the old films, it was just ape does not kill ape. That was the main thing. It wasn't necessarily apes together stronger, but that still is the same sentiment. You know.
I feel though when we look back at these films, like that trilogy, right? Because I consider it a trilogy. The quality, because the last film, spoilers. I'm not a fan of it. I'll be honest with you, and then we'll talk about why.
I,
But
I'm going to say something controversial here. I don't really care for the one with Woody Harrelson in it.
okay,
Not because it's not a good movie. It is a great movie, but I feel like it's basically just retreading the ground from the previous movie.
it does. It
So,
doesn't expand beyond it because it
yeah.
feels like we picked up the following week. Like like
Yes.
okay, like yeah.
So that's why I do appreciate the newer movie more than that one, even if that movie is a better film.
Let's get
Because
into it because I want to talk about it. I really want to talk about it. So This one is called The Fall of the Kingdom of the... What is it?
It's just called The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which, man, the naming conventions of these movies.
Here's my deal. You just said that they retreaded the same ground.
A lot of
This
the same
movie...
It's not the exact same movie.
This new film, here are the things that I enjoy. Again, spoilers if you watch the film, or if you're not necessarily wanting to hear it, come back. Again, we do this all the time. We spoil halfway through and we warn you afterwards. Spoilers. Here we are. I really dug the introduction of this tribe of eagle tamers, of Noah, right? Noah?
Eagle Clan, not Noah. Yes.
Eagle Clan.
Noah, and there's literally a flood at the end of the movie. So
yes, there is. There you go.
Yeah. Well,
a lot of that.
Before you continue, I want to point out real quick. I mentioned that the previous movies had subtle references. This movie has winking at the camera references to the old movies. And while the other movies with Caesar had like very clear but subtle biblical allusions, this one has a guy named Noah rather, keep only his family surviving through the flood. So it's like
exactly.
And
literally has a flood.
Yep, and having a bird help them find safety. So
here's the good from what I had. The new clan, we saw one that was not necessarily tied to Caesar's teachings, right? And that's okay because they're expanding. The goal is that if we're taking this as... This is why I think these films hit differently when we talk about the animal kingdom, okay? If we look at the 60s, the 70s, and we look at the aughts and to today, there's a little more heart towards the animal kingdom when it comes to situations, right?
100%. In the old movies, the whole point of the apes was to see ourselves in them. In the new movies, it's more to see humanity in the way we interact with them.
Exactly, because they are their own individuals, right? And what Caesar fought and died for, and this takes place a few generations after Caesar,
years, give or take, yeah.
So we're looking at this clan that has their own traditions. They have their own way of life that is not tied to what Caesar was building or doing. And I can appreciate that because it shows the expansion of the world, right? We talked about Fallout. Remember, Fallout's only in the US, but what about the rest of the world, right? So I enjoy the fact that they're not all under Caesar's rule or he wasn't that type of leader, but that type of belief, that... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I've heard some other reviewers say that they thought it was unrealistic that these apes would develop and never have heard of Caesar. And I'm like, they're in LA. Caesar's in San Francisco. There isn't exactly mass communication, but all around the world, apes are developing intelligence. So anywhere there was a zoo, they've escaped. And the idea that sign language would still exist in this culture, just like it was in Caesar's culture, that makes perfect sense because
100%.
Around the world, we've been teaching the great apes sign language. So it makes sense that, and by the way, I love that all the Eagle Clan kind of simultaneously sign and speak, not even knowing why they do it. They just do it, So it makes sense. And I appreciate that he doesn't know Caesar.
This movie was 45 minutes too long. Because they are trying to reintroduce you. When was the last Apes film? They're trying to almost reintroduce you to this world that we already know has been established.
So 2017 to 2024. That's how far.
Okay. So the 8 years?
I don't know. I don't teach math.
I read and write. I don't fucking do math. So this is the thing. We walked in, when you watched, okay, let's just say, can we agree? 90% of the people who went to watch this film because they've already watched one or of all the previous films?
I am going to say yes with an asterisk.
Okay.
Because I will say, number one, I think the one thing that made the previous movies so good is that they appealed to people who weren't just diehard fans of the series, right? So there's a lot of people who watched those movies that didn't internalize them, but did love them at the time. And number two, even if they were maybe too young to watch those movies because they're young adults now, or maybe because they just didn't care to watch them before, but their friends taking them over now, this movie is meant to be a new start to the series. Something that, for example, Marvel hasn't figured out. They're 30 movies in, and they're like, you need to have watched all the previous movies to watch, as opposed to just like, we'll catch you up. You know what I mean? And so I'm okay with that. I'm used to that kind of like long form cinematic storytelling where you're going to have to, like Star Trek does this a lot. They assume that this could be your first Star Trek movie. So we want to introduce you to it as we go.
With that being said, okay, it kind of you kind of are leaving behind the fan that came in from this past trilogy, right? Assuming that this is their first film. I mean, think about it. If my kid's 14 years old right now, right? He didn't watch the old 70s films with me. He's watched the most recent run. And when he walked into that theater, you know what happened about an hour in? He fell asleep.
Ha! Okay.
So I'm like, hey, are you? And I asked him, like, what happened? He goes, there was a lull there that I understood that who Caesar was. I understood that Raka, the new orangutan, is kind of that still one of the last prophets of that teachings.
Okay.
Believes that. And my son kind of said, like, we understand that this is the world already. We get that. So we met a human now that can speak. Okay, cool. Like, but it just he said that journey. I guess we could talk about the hero's journey. Maybe he's just too young of a person to understand the hero's journey.
I really don't want movies to just be using the heroes. I'm literally giving a talk at Comic Palooza in a week.
Well, use this as an example of somebody that they shouldn't use it.
Why you shouldn't use the hero's journey. Well, here's the thing.
This is one of those cases, Kevin.
I do agree this movie does have a bit of the refusal to call and that kind of stuff, and also the mentor, all those things. But I will say, you go back to what the purpose of the original films was, which is satire, right? It is pointing out things that are wrong in the world using comedy or outlandish, storytelling. And in this case, there is definitely a skewering, unlike the previous movies, which may have been the first one about animal abuse, and then the second, well, literally one of them is called War, and it's about war, right? The third one.
Yeah.
But this one, it's about religion. And the whole movie is skewering the concept of religion, not making a comedy joke out of it. But it's not like, oh, look, the apes have religion. Religion's funny. No, it's about how it is used. Because we as an audience, presuming you're talking about the returning fans, right, have seen Caesar's rise. We know what he believed in. We know what his dream was. We know when his dream was hurt and when he felt it wasn't going to work and then he believed in it again. We knew all that stuff. So now, 300 years later, which, by the way, if you want to take a really biblical sense to it, the Bible, for the most part, was written about 200-300 years after, or certainly collated, right?
Yeah.
So now we have, how is his belief system interpreted? We have, it's clearly become religious. They have a symbol. They don't even know what the symbol means, but it was his symbol. We have one group that is saying, here's who he was, and now let's go to war because of it, And then we have another group saying, well, he was so peaceful that I'm not even going to go bother trying to tell other people about it because I'm that peaceful. And it's like, so you end up with these two extremely diametrically opposed views of religion. And if we hadn't already been introduced to and seen with our own eyes what his actual life was like, that wouldn't have the same meaning. So I think that helps to have seen his life. Again, I feel like they could have done that in 2 movies instead of 3. It helps to have seen his life in order for this religious allegory to have the weight that it has.
But if a movie, and I 100% agree, I took it and I saw the religious symbols. I mean, it's there. Literally, he says things, Raka says things of, they are twisting his words, right?
Yep.
And I'm a believer, and I'm not hiding it. I've always mentioned, and I've had this conversation with people in public and private, that it's always the manipulation of the word, right? How somebody wants to skew it in there, in anything, any story, any biblical thing, any religious thing, and we'll leave it at that. But for this film, I can understand as a film fan and as a writer, and I can sit back and watch this for what it is. I saw them trying to intermingle the hero's journey with a religion conversation.
I mean, your journey is designed to have those things intermingled, but
which is okay. There it is. It crescendoed, but for entertainment's sake, the way this was touted, you could have cut off a good chunk of that middle and got to what is his name, Proximus. Yeah. Proximus's camp, and then we could have started learning and understanding what the deal is here. Okay, let's move forward, because even Proximus's camp, setting up with the other human that speaks, that was drawn out. Like Noah having to come to terms, and the fact that what he needs to happen, he was okay.
You know what's ironic? Hold on, I'm gonna time out. Ironically, a few of the things that you say are drawn out, I felt was done too quickly.
Really? Go, please elaborate.
Specifically, those 2 things you just mentioned.
Let's go.
The second human, I feel like should have been more of a reveal and should have been a bigger deal. Instead, he's just like, "Hi, I'm the second human. I can already do things. I already agree with this. Here's what's going to happen." And I really wanted more of like, "Oh no, there's another human. What does this mean? Is there like, because at this point we don't know where she is from, right? So is there like a whole society of humans? Are there humans that are immune naturally? What's going on? And I wish more was done with that. And then his story just ends with her story, which is fair, but like I wish there was more to why he was there. And then the second thing that I think was rushed is Caesar is told by Proximus, "See, look, she lied to you about her origins.
Noah.
The humans can't be trusted." Sorry, Caesar. I said Caesar. Yeah, Noah. Noah is told, "She lied to you about your origins. You can't trust humans." And he immediately goes, "I can't trust humans." And it's like, I feel like that needed more of like the Nova May. She's definitely somebody who is duplicitous. It would have been good to get more of his conflict other than just, "You didn't tell me about where you're from because you're scared of us. How
Turn my
dare
back
you?"
on you.
And I'm
Yeah,
like,
like it's like
that
yeah.
is a valid reason. And we find out later her reasons are different, but the reason that he's presented with is a valid reason to be scared. And I feel like that needed more developing. I feel like the betrayal of her and then him later still accepting her as a friend or whatever, or at least somebody that he can at least tolerate, that
Yeah.
that needed more development. And by the way, you're complaining about it a lot. I do have complaints too, but my complaints, I freely admit, are more geeky than anything else.
I'm talking about entertainment's sake, right? Because I
Yeah.
can sit here and if me, you, and the group, the circles we sit in, would sit here and tear this thing apart and kind of dissect it, we'll find tons to talk about and really, oh wow, this thing went deep. But when we
But you're
sit
saying
down
it
and
needed to be more interesting.
it needed to be a little more entertaining because of the fact that let's assume because you have to, and sadly because this is a call back to the series. It's not a standalone film. It's not touted as a standalone film. It's touted as the next generation
Yes.
of this line.
The next
So
beginning of the next trilogy.
the beginning of the next trilogy. So it's safe to assume, and I'm not the only one. Peace, Primos, let me know at my Primos podcast and at Kevin Garcia guion bajo com. There you go. What your thoughts are on this? But you walk in going, okay, this was entertaining because I already knew what Caesar was about, like you said.
Well, let me
And
ask
here
you a
we are
question.
now drawing this out. I feel like we got to fill time for what?
So there are also elements that I felt were told out of order in a way that would have been more entertaining.
Okay.
We as an audience know that in the apes future, humans are unable to talk and as smart as chimpanzees. We know this, all right? If you are familiar with the franchise. But the last movie just showed you that they go mute and have trouble functioning. It didn't give you the depth of what that means, right? So if you hadn't watched the originals, you might not know that. And the trailer told you flat out, there's a girl that can talk. So I was surprised watching the movie that the first human we actually see is the talking one. Because I feel like, yeah, it's not a surprise. But I feel like for this story to be told, we should have seen interactions with the wild humans first and then had her speak. So my friends thought it was hilarious when the ape drops the books. He's like, "Oh, this one talks." It was and it was funny, right? But at the same time, I think that would have had more weight to the audience if we had been following the journey with them. Just like I appreciate that they were reintroducing Caesar from their point of view, I also wish they reintroduced humans from their point of view. You know what I mean? Which honestly, that might have slowed it down a little bit more for you, but I think it would have made it have more impact when it happens.
Why is it though that when we watched Rise, I couldn't get enough? I wanted more.
Because everything there was new. Everything, like, even though there were so many callbacks, even though it was the same basic premise, everything was new. And again, I pick on the Woody Harrelson movie War for not being necessary. It was a good movie. The actual battles were great. The actual the mental battle basically between Caesar and Woody Harrelson's character was intense. It was well done. This one, I think Proximus also should have been introduced sooner. Like we get a big shadow
Agreed.
behind him. He's going to be important, and then he is a great character. He's an amazing character.
I think he's a great villain.
Yeah,
like,
but we
fits
needed
the
him.
role.
We needed him earlier in the movie, not necessarily fighting Caesar. Sorry, I keep saying Caesar, not necessarily fighting Noah. And by the way, I Okay, so I want to get to one of my little quibbles here, which is not a geeky quibble, but like a societal quibble.
Okay.
In all of the reboot movies, the good apes, and primarily Caesar in the first three, so that makes sense. But the good apes are light-skinned chimpanzees, and the bad apes are dark-skinned chimpanzees.
Yes, and why is there colored eyes?
Yeah,
Right?
well, I can get over the which by the way, in this movie, Noah does not have blue eyes, so I'm cool with that. But still, all of the good apes are light skinned, and all of the bad apes are dark skinned, and that, as much as I love the performances and the designs, that's a question.
Think about it. Look at Proximus. Proximus is a darker tone.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a dark. Was it Koga? Was a darker
Koga, yeah,
tone.
that's the one I was
Yeah.
saying earlier. I started with an
Yeah.
N. I don't know where I got an
Yeah,
N from.
darker tone than him. And in this film, the one thing that stood out, I swear to you, I remember reading something saying, "Are we at this is where okay? At what point are we going to have?" And this is where it gets weird because I don't know where we divide the line between humanity and
Yep.
chimp and the apes,
Yep.
right? Why is it always a male character, a
Yep.
male
Not
lead?
just a male character, but why a chimpanzee? Because chimpanzees, we always consider genetically our closest cousins. We consider them the most like us.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever back in the day they would dress up apes to be humans, it was chimpanzees. I would love to see a Planet of the Apes movie where the main character was an orangutan or a gorilla, or they name drop them in this movie, a gibbon. Gibbons
The
are
gibbon.
the gibbons are the only great apes we've not seen in a Planet of the Apes franchise, but it's implied that they also can talk. So I want a little tiny gibbon hanging out with a gorilla as our main
Not
character.
only that, but also the female ape.
Yeah,
Because I remember the TV series, and we go back to being that geek.
in this movie,
There was some.
no, I'm sorry, I'm with you. In this movie, the female ape is literally just the princess to be saved. That's all she is.
Yeah, yeah. She literally is an accessory in every sense of the word to Noah, and I just feel like are we past that at this time and age because we're expecting these more, and I hate the word of verbiage, the more evolved form of these apes. Is that the wrong verbiage
Yeah, it's
there?
definitely the wrong verbiage, but I get
Yeah.
what you're going with. I'm with you on where you're going with that, because you're right. Like, I'm complaining about the skin tone of chimpanzees, which, by the way, one weird thing that threw me off, according to the director, Proximus Caesar is a bonobo and everyone else is a chimpanzee. And do you know what bonobos are?
No idea.
So bonobos to most people look identical to chimpanzees. But the difference is that on the whole, chimpanzees are much more violent and carnivorous, while bonobos, while they will eat meat and will fight, much more prefer finding other means of socializing. So in fact, they literally use sex as a currency in their culture, flat out in their culture.
Interesting.
And what's weird to me is bonobos. One of the things you can see about them is they often have like a split, like a not a split, a part down the middle of their head, and
Okay.
several of Noah's tribe have that part down the middle of their hair, whereas Proximus does not. I thought the Eagle Clan were bonobos watching the movie, and I was like, oh, that's why they're so peaceful. These are bonobos that can speak. But according to the director, the only bonobo was Proximus, and what made him so different is that he was the angry bonobo. And I'm like, weird, but okay. So odd choice. But either way,
But
yeah,
no,
the skin color, the gender.
the skin color, the gender, the fact that we still rely on. It just took too long to get to where it kept okay, let's move the movie forward. Let's move the film forward here. You know?
I want to go get to my complaints, because I think that's part of yours too.
Let's talk about your complaints after this short break, Primos. We'll be right back.
La gente llora, el zapato vuela junto a tu boca, la gente cruza, los carros chocan y uno todo ignora. La vida sin la corriente, sin salida, aquella rosa marchitada.
I'm watching Elia play her Katamari Damacy game.
This one too. Oh,
All right, thank you for that break. Oh, what is going on here?
roll you up.
This is Elia's stream. She's streaming Katamari Damacy.
Primos and Kevin. Hi, Primos and Kevin. Hi. I'm gonna try.
Hi,
Kevin says
back.
hi.
Cousin, Primo. How are y'all? Oh my god.
This is amazing.
Podcast. I'm on the guys. I'm on the podcast. Let me tell you about King Kong, or what are y'all talking about?
Yeah, sure. Why not? King Kong.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Elia.
Kevin, I just rolled up a gnome.
I can see the gnome.
The level with crabs.
Elia, you
Oh.
need to teach me how to stream.
There's a Planet of Apes. Yeah, I didn't watch it.
No, that's still accurate. It's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Get over here. I love
Well,
it.
we're gonna let Elia finish up her stream.
And I hope the computer's stopping dumb. I miss y'all. Guys, if y'all, my Primos podcast right there, I press a button.
I love Elia's little
Follow the
animated
podcast. I'm not
avatar.
gonna be on the next week's episode because I'm here. But y'all should go watch it anyway. Have fun. No, you're good. Don't leave me. Don't leave me.
All right, Elia.
Oh,
We'll let you go.
Venus flytrap.
All right,
Teach me how to do
Primos.
that.
Elia, man, she's all about the streaming. You know what? As of this recording, which will launch after she's done her week of streaming, this is amazing, man. Like she does stuff with Diabetes Foundation, JDRF, and the first night she streamed, she raised about, I want to say about close to $2,000. The first night, the first 2 hours of her streaming, her fans and her followers there all chipped in, dug deep, and it really showed out. And every day this week, she streams 2-3 hours this week for this for the foundation, and she has done great stuff, man.
See, it raises two questions for me. Number one, how does she do it? And number two, why is she trying to help other people? What the heck?
Look at that Prima helping out people, helping out her
Why
her
does she
her
have
listeners.
to be so amazing? Why does she have to be the Elia that we all need in our lives?
Well, she's the Kevin Garcia of our lives, apparently.
I tried to change it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Primos, we are back. Thank you guys for hanging in there. We're going to get here to the other side of this dam, this wall, this flood, if you will, of
Noah's flood of
Noah's
commentary.
flood.
Which again, I'm going to say flat out, I did enjoy this movie more than I didn't. You know, and again, I love the Woody Harrelson one too. My only complaint is when I go back and remember them, I can remember each of the original Planet of the Apes movies as being different, except for the first two, but that's for obvious reasons. But when it comes to War and Dawn, I have trouble separating them in my memory because they're just so similar. And I appreciate that this movie is very different. Where I complain is probably in that I wish it was a little bit closer to the series that it's continuing. All right. So what I mean by that is this. I already mentioned earlier that I wish we got to see the humans before introducing the talking one. I also wish there was way more orangutans. There's one. We get one of the wise old men of the forest.
Did you stay to the end? Did you get the little
sound effect?
Possible sound effect at the end? That's Raka, apparently.
I'm not even gonna worry about it. It was a non-stinger. My friend complained, like, we waited for that. I'm like, yeah. But as somebody who's watched this since the beginning, and I saw Icarus, the second I saw Icarus in the background when I saw Rise come out, I was like, oh man, they're gonna do it. They're gonna bring it back. I have been waiting for that spaceship to land. So when May,
you're not wrong,
/Nova showed up, I fully thought she was going to be an astronaut that's been in hiding for a few years. She learned not to talk because of that, right? And when she finally said, I have a name and it's not Nova, I thought she was going to say Taylor. And the thing is that a lot of the audience who didn't watch the old movies would probably think, oh, it's a reference to Taylor Swift or something. And that's fine. They could have loved it. I would have enjoyed it for a different level, right? The whole movie has astronaut imagery. They see the astronaut relief on the wall. We see the giant telescope. There's so many references to space and astronauts, and yet nothing. And then, so I wish that had happened, you know. I do wish there was, like, we get Raka saying there's more to Caesar, and then we get Proximus not believing in Caesar. I wish there was more people that have their own versions of Caesar. It doesn't have to be a variety. It could have been the same versions. Like, I would have preferred there be more orangutans that also were keepers of the knowledge,
more
right?
tribes,
By the way,
more.
sorry, go ahead.
You know, say more tribes, more different tribes that do different things. You know, the Eagle Clan, and we have the other ones because that's what I wanted as well. Yeah,
I was actually earnestly surprised to find out that the Eagle Clan had never interacted with another clan. Again, realistically, it makes sense because you'd have groups of apes all over the country that are just near zoos, and they probably separated from other apes at some point. Why was there only one gorilla in this entire movie? Like one gorilla.
true.
I would have loved to have like either a society of gorillas or at least a reference to why there was one gorilla working.
And why did so we get barely any taste of an explanation of why they moved their base there?
Yeah,
because it wasn't they were just always there. Proximus went there, and he set up shop there because he saw the vault.
And that brings me to my next complaint, which is I was a little bit upset to find out there were so many humans still able to talk. But then I thought about it and I was like, oh, actually, this does tie into the old movies in that the mutant humans that lived underground for thousands of years and had forgotten human culture to the point that they thought the bomb was God. You know, these are their ancestors. These are those humans living in the vaults that eventually just so much time has passed. That being said, I feel like the humans living in this particular vault were basically vault tech. They had all the knowledge, like literally all of it. Nothing had been lost in 300 years of not having a society.
Yeah, they're literally wearing contemporary clothing.
Yeah, well, I could see the clothing not changing much because they don't exactly have the ability to develop a new style. But like language, like you know how when you watch a movie where it's like it's been thousands of years and they're like Zardoz. You know why that movie is called Zardoz? Because they found a book that they thought was the holy text, but some of the words had been erased from the title cover. So all they could read was Zardoz. It's the Wizard of Oz. The book they found is the Wizard of Oz. So I wanted that kind of a loss of knowledge. Instead, they call the other guys and they're like, Fort Wayne, Indiana here. And I'm like, they know what Indiana is? Like, it's been 300 years. They have been post-apocalyptic in that world longer than the United States has existed in the real world.
I'm getting Fallout flashbacks.
Right? Exactly. Also 300 years. So in both versions, Fallout or this movie, it has been longer in the apocalypse than it had been since the founding of the United States. Right? So we don't talk the way people talked in the founding of the United States. And you could argue, oh, we have mass media now. Yes, but they don't have mass media. They
just got the satellites to work.
They just got them to work, which, by the way, that's crazy that circuit board still works 300 years later. But so that stuff bothered me. I didn't want him to say Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'd rather he say like we're in for one, Indiana. You know, like maybe that's how they say it now. Like they can still speak English, but they don't know what Indiana is. You know, it has no meaning to them. As far as they know, they're in the country of Indiana. They don't know.
Or it could be Vault 105 or whatever. Because there was a name on the side of those doors. You remember? It did have a name to it.
It had a name. It was the name of some fort. I mean, not fort. Like a naval base, I think.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like, by the way, we keep saying Fallout. I had a different thought during this because I don't play the Fallout games, but I play the Horizon games.
Yeah, you do.
Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West.
Alloy.
And oh my God, this movie is so much that. Like from the overgrown.
Actually, yeah.
I was watching the whole opening scene and I was like, this is literally a level of the game. You're watching.
Wouldn't it be cool though? Like we talk about the future, like, okay, if we're going to give the apes the benefit of the doubt of advancing knowledge and, you know, doing their own thing, 300 years or so, I mean, they have. I guess it bugged me because it's not like I don't want the Tim Burton movie where they're in another planet and they have technology.
Yeah, they were trying too hard to be different.
Yeah, but there needs to be like a, and they were establishing societies. I guess the cultures that they were building is their advancement from what Caesar was, because they were literally blindly following Caesar or whoever was in charge. And now we have divisions, we have different beliefs, different culture, right? Within
we have the Orthodox Caesarians and the Reformist Caesarians.
See, Max? He gets it. But we only saw one, which again, I think it's a downside to it. And maybe as we move forward in this franchise, it made money. People liked it. You know, they're going to make another one. So we'll see if we have hope for it.
I would have wanted to see division between the ape species. Like maybe because like in the Planet of the Apes we see in Taylor's future, like 3,000 years later. Chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas all live together, right? But this being 300 years after the apocalypse, their apes are doing whatever they can to survive. I imagine that they would probably self-segregate, right? You'd have chimpanzee groups, you'd have gorilla groups, you'd have orangutan groups, and it would have been nice to have seen that division, which is why I say imagine if we had a movie where Noah was a gorilla, and because gorillas climbing is not unheard of, but it's difficult for them. So the idea that gorillas, which by the way are inherently more peaceful than chimpanzees, if gorillas were that eagle tribe, that would have been really interesting. And then to have chimpanzees overwhelm them by sheer numbers, you know what I mean? That would be.
Isn't there something to be said about apes and how, like, when you really want to start dissecting it piece by piece and splitting hairs, you start looking at how the dominance of the species, right? How they're contained, they're controlled. Like, oh, he would sing to the birds and they control them. So we're kind of going back into that cycle of humans thinking they're above a certain creature.
100%. And here
we are, the apes doing it with
one group of apes thinks they're above the birds, which, and the other groups of apes think they're above the humans, which, but at the same time, it's like, wasn't the whole first movie in this franchise about not seeing yourself as above somebody else? Just because that's one thing I loved about the first movie with John Lithgow's character, is that it explored mental illness and mental health in such a unique way that many of these movies don't touch on. And that is in this movie, but nobody acknowledges it.
Speaking of John Lithgow, how he was battling Alzheimer's, right? That was the
I don't know if it was specifically Alzheimer's, but yeah.
I believe so. And please correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but because, by the way, I got a lot of people not talking shit, but I appreciate you listening, because it tells me people are listening, that they're like, when the Fallout, we were talking about, hey, Freddy, was that ocelot monster in the games? And I said, no, it wasn't. It goes, actually, they were. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, but they weren't the hand-mouth things.
Yeah, because they probably
is a version of it. Exactly. So I'm like, okay, fine, I was wrong. And they told me it's not the CNR, it's the NCR, the New California Republic. And I was like, right. Instead of the California Republic. So thank you for listening. But here's the deal. Yeah, thank you for calling us on our stuff. But what I was getting at, I saw something, and I don't know if it was just one of those like clickbait things, saying that Planet of the Apes, instead of the virus that spread, right, that perpetuated the virus from helping the apes, I guess, obtain more, mutate them to gain more knowledge and become more human-esque, if you will. So what I was reading, that there was, instead of a bomb being dropped, that it caused for Alzheimer's and those type of illnesses to spread more.
Yes. Because remember, it was designed to cure that, and instead it
was weaponized
apes, and then made humans basically go back to that level.
And that's why we have the humans now are basically considered to have that ailment.
And that's something.
It's go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's something I wish they had explored more in this film, because again, I'm gonna repeat, I overall liked it, but May's character, when she says, my mother taught me this, and then we see her go back to the place, she's clearly raised in that facility, right? That's where she's from. Never stated, but very clear, right? Also very clear, but not stated, is that the person comes out to meet her in a suit. We see that suit now being scrubbed crazily. She's not allowed back in. Basically, somebody had to volunteer for this mission, knowing they would never come home again. But not stated, which I wish they had stated, is that it is a matter of time before the virus gets them. Because we already know from Woody Harrelson's character, for example, that eventually it hit him. Even though it didn't hit every human the same speed, it hit everybody eventually, right? So that means May, by the next movie, if she's in the next movie, should be mute. Like 100% should be mute. And it also means that
it's inevitable.
Trevathan, or whatever his name is, the other talking guy, what's the actor's name? I always know him very well.
He was in everything. He's Magnolia. He's in Shameless. But
the thing is that his character should also have a ticking clock of when he's going to eventually lose his ability to read and speak and everything else. And the thing is that, like, I wish that had been stated out loud. Like, they don't have to say everything out loud, but I wish that part had. Like, when the two of them
something
were talking,
like, "Hey, I'm on the clock. That's why they went to get you."
She's like,
replacement.
exactly. Like, I'm I agree to do this, knowing full well that I will eventually become those echoes out there. And
Yeah,
then maybe he didn't know that. Maybe I don't know where they never explain where he's from exactly.
at
They
all.
explained him running away, but running away from what? Was he in an underground thing? Did he go out one day? I have no idea. But anyway, yeah. So my point is, I wish that was stated because I feel like that would have made her character more interesting as well. Because yes, she's lying to people a lot for good reasons, I think. But it would have been even better if we had established she knows full well that this is a suicide mission. And not only a suicide mission, but a slow and painful suicide mission
Because we're
in which she
left in
will
the
lose
dark,
her
man. We're just
humanity.
kind of assume. She just tells us, "Oh, you know what's in there." Yeah, I
When
do.
she's staring at those mute humans, she's not staring at them like, "Oh, that's sad." She's staring at them because that will be me in a few months. Like she needs to be that needed to have been said.
I agree because,
Yeah.
like I said, we sit here talking about it, and we have to dig for obscure articles and people that kind of will study the film and kind of go deep into it to kind of, yeah, that makes more sense.
People like my
Saying it
Primos
out loud,
podcast.
like my Primos podcast, when we say it out loud and we can talk about it like this, it can change the your idea if you're going to go enjoy it or not. Or you know what, you can agree with me or with Kevin. That's what it's all about. The internet's there for whining, complaining, and agreeing, and everything in between. So I think that this film, not my favorite of the bunch, not the worst by far. Tim Burton for me still the
Oh,
lower
well,
end on that.
I don't think but you know what, honestly, as much as I hate the Tim Burton one, I still find a Battle for Planet of the Apes to just be stupid.
Yeah,
At
that was bad.
least the Tim Burton one is so bad it's entertaining, but it's so bad.
Here's the thing, and I'm kind of start winding down the show here, but the Rise of Planet of the Apes trilogy, okay? Dawn, right? Kingdom and Dawn and Rise, right? Is one of those movies that, like Back to the Future,
Mhm.
were to just come on television, you kind of let it
Yeah.
play.
That actually happened to me before watching this, War, and I just started watching War. Just started watching it. It was like it was recommended to me on a streaming service, and I was like, "Yes, I'll watch it again."
And I think that's a great making film, making something creative when you can just, if it's just there, you just enjoy it because no matter where you walk into this film, you're gonna enjoy it. And I think I had high expectations, and
You
maybe
don't feel that
I
way
had
about
them
this
too
one?
high.
Because I feel
I
like if
don't.
this one was on, I would enjoy it just as much. I still have the same complaints, but my complaints are really about like what I wanted to happen, and that's, I'll be honest, not the movie's fault. Just because I wanted it to
I think.
happen doesn't mean
Look, I'll give them this. The act, of course, the performances were great. I can live or die, whatever with May, Nova, and even Rocka to an extent. Like I felt like they needed to utilize him more, and it was almost unnecessary to have him drown or disappear. Like, why not bring
Yeah.
him into the
I
fold?
really
Like,
wanted him to come back at some point, maybe at the very
because
last.
imagine if he was the Billy Graham, like, woo, we're talking about him,
God,
walking
that's
into
horrible,
that.
but I can see that.
Yeah, be what I'm getting, like that extreme, right? But like his version of, because he's literally the contradiction of Proximus's, um, uh, oh my god, I'm losing doctrine, if you will. His
Mhm.
belief, right? Like his whole message is completely opposite of what Rocka's message is. And so to have that happen within the group, within the apes that are being worked to death, you know, and it would spread, but then it becomes Spartacus, and then we go by Charlton Heston. And, it happens again. Kevin, this was fun. You enjoyed this. I enjoyed this. But what are your final thoughts on this?
Well, where do we go from here? Like, you said why you didn't like this movie. What would you want it to become? Like, what would you want the next? Because they clearly want to make another one, and I don't see a problem with
Sure.
that happening. What
Sure.
do you want it to become?
So, how I see it, I do agree that we are going to see humans come out of the vaults, and we're going to see another mix of another
That'll be battle again.
land. It'll be battle again. You're gonna see it happen because the humans are gonna come back. You don't. Okay. The one thing that I took away from when I at the end of this film is that
Mhm.
the humans are bad. They're the villain in a sense, but at the same time, they're the underdog that's gonna come back. But we've already followed the apes journey. Are we going to, what side do you root for here? Because they're not gonna come in as a unified front. They're not.
Mhm.
They're literally said, you're the enemy, you're the problem here. We need to get rid of you. Apes can't exist and do this anymore. That's what May told us in some sense. So She was willing to sacrifice and do what she had to for her people. Fine. That's exactly right. Human race. So if we're watching these films as an observer, as the watcher, if you will, like, who are you rooting for here? Right. So that story has to be told, or we are going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't see, and maybe my brain hasn't cooked it together enough. I don't see, oh, maybe go back to what you were saying.
Mhm.
We get a spaceship that fucking finally lands. And that's going to throw everything out of whack. Like, whoa. Because remember, in the old movies, they kind of explain that they don't travel to another planet. They travel through like a time warp type deal in space.
Well, I mean, technically, they just traveled in the first movie, but in the second movie, it was a time warp. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a time warp, right? So if we have something like that happen where the ship from the first film crash lands, you know, and we see the apes like, whoa, what is this? And then we have a whole new interaction. It could be a rebirth. We don't know what to expect from that because that's from the old world, 100% the old world, but they're seeing the new. Maybe we can have it where Noah, let's just use him as the example, Noah's tribe finds the ship and actually understanding that there is a balance that could occur helps these humans. And in that sense, plants the seed, which will then eventually will get the people from the vaults come up, find humans interacting, and then
I love that we keep saying vaults.
it's Fallout.
Yeah,
What
I
about
know, I
you?
know.
What do you think, or what do you want from this moving forward?
So I've heard several reviewers speculate and say, "Oh, there's so many space references in this movie. Maybe the next movie, the apes will go to space." And I'm like, I don't see the point of that.
Nah.
Like, not yet anyway. It feels very weird, but I really do want the astronaut story told. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, this movie was 300 years later. They haven't developed their ape society yet to the point that it's an established society. So I would like to see a movie where we have an entire gorilla culture, an entire orangutan culture. Please give me hobbit-sized gibbons. Please, I want hobbit-sized gibbons. Um, I want that, and I want them to interact, maybe fight the vault humans or whatever, and then we'll get a movie that's set farther down the line where the ship returns. You know?
Yeah, I think the ship returning would be a pivotal change there, where we'll see. Maybe it's the end. It's the ending shot.
Of the
The
friend,
ship
well,
lands.
of
The
of
ship
of a
lands.
movie. I
Humans
want a movie
of a
with the
movie.
ship. I want the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, I want. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, that'd be the ending shot of the ship lands,
Mhm.
and maybe both sides are going at it, and the ship just lands, and we're like, whoa, like what happens here? You know. So I think that'd be a good place to go. But hey, who knows, Kevin? You could be the one writing it, man. You never know. You guys listening out there, please look into Mr. Kevin Garcia _com for all your pop culture critiques, comic book lore. And I've been really enjoying some of the newer ones you've been putting out there, man. Definitely.
Honestly, I haven't put out a new video in over a week for two reasons. One, I've been very busy working on my comic and also grading papers and wrapping up the end of the school year. And because of that, I was like, well, I have this interview I did with George Takei, so let me edit it up, put those up, and that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But then the second reason popped up, which is now that I'm at 10K, TikTok has been flagging almost every one of my videos as being unoriginal. And I'm like, what does that mean? It doesn't give me any information. So I went through the answers. One of the answers was if it loops. Okay, fine. I'm no longer doing the funny loop things at the end of the video. Fine, let's cut.
Okay.
And then it's like, well, if you're using audio or so that's yours, and it says a substantial amount. Don't know what that means. But I noticed that in videos where I put like a small clip of a audio from a cartoon, they'll flag it and then I'll dispute it, explaining what's happening, and they'll be like, all right, we approve it. But with the George Takei videos, there is no audio clip from somebody else for most of them. There is literally no loop. This has never been on the internet before. This happened live last summer where I was interviewing him. This is the first time it's been put anywheres on TikTok, and it's being flagged as unoriginal. And on top of that, when I appeal it, several of the George Takei videos have been rejected. And I'm like, TikTok, you're really testing me right now.
The AI they use is just recognizing George Takei.
No, well, I think what's happening is because each of the videos is edited from the same film source, it's seeing the videos having the same static camera shot. You know what I mean? And
Okay.
so because of
Like
that,
the same source.
Yeah, so it's thinking it's the same video being posted over and over and over again, even though every video is different. So I'm just
that sucks, man. I mean, as soon as you get to where you need to go, it all gets wonky, right? And
that said,
but
we'll
hey,
get back into it.
we'll get back into it, man. Make it happen. I enjoy the videos. I do. I learn a lot, and so I definitely put them on. I share them, and Primos do the same. Follow Mr. Kevin Garcia, like I said, and of course follow my Primos podcast. Before we end tonight, Kevin, I know you said you're going to be doing some conventions soon. Is there anything you want to announce?
Well, I've already said it a couple times on this show, but it has now officially been announced by somebody other than me. And that is that on the 25th, I'll be part of a stream being hosted by Comic Drake, comic book YouTuber, big time comic book YouTuber, where he's got all kinds of comic book YouTubers and TikTokers and stuff playing Fortnite to raise money for charity. I cannot stress enough that I don't know Fortnite. In fact, I spent all night last night teaching myself to play Fortnite. I went from dying within the first 5 seconds to dying at 3rd out of 100, I think, or however many people are in the Fortnite.
Hey, that's really good.
But I'm in the early brackets. I assume like if you do better, it'll put you at a higher bracket.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I got 3rd, and the only reason I died at 3rd is not because I was killed, but because I found out there was fall damage. It's like, oh, that'll kill me. Okay.
You know what, man? Elia's gonna have to show you how to play some Fortnite, man. She's all about. She's doing Fortnite this Friday as well. I think she's doing okay. I think she's doing Fortnite
on my birthday. What the heck?
Hold on, it's your birthday coming up?
Oh yeah. Well, by the time this episode comes out, it already happened. So
this episode comes out. It would be the week of the 23rd, 21st, 21st. Yeah. So this episode will be coming out on 20th or 21st. If my calendar is right,
I will officially be a year closer to death.
Nice. So that means it'll be this Friday the 17th. So tomorrow's your birthday.
I don't know what you're talking about.
As of recording. So let me see something real quick. I'm gonna do a fun geeky thing because I do geeky things.
Uh-oh.
So that means it would be 5/17, right?
I don't know that.
5/17.
I've said several times, numbers are not my thing. And when people ask me,
do you know?
Ask me how long ago was I born? I honestly, I was very young when it happened.
Yeah, Kevin, meet your Pokemon birthday.
Oh, is that what that is?
This is a Muna.
Okay, it's like an
that is made number 5/17. It is Muna. I believe it's a psychic type, and like it is a psychic, and it's weak to bugs, ghost, and darkness.
Those are not my weaknesses.
But that's your Pokemon birthday. Look at that. Pokemon birthday. We'll do that for everybody whenever it happens. So, Primos, I want to thank you guys for listening. Of course, check us out all over all your streaming platforms and, of course, the website. Let us know what you think about Planet of the Apes. And, of course, as always, no matter where you're from, we're always Primos. Yes, you are. You always are where you are. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, no, every time you say that, I think that's what you're saying. Because that's an old like Yogi Bear.
No matter where you're from, around the world, because Primos, right? Different parts of the world,
right. You were right.
Countries. Kevin,
you were all
derail us. You derail us.
Hey, look, Elliot's not here to do it. Somebody's got to do it.
That's true.
We out, Primos.